what's the cost to you if you stay in the small shoes? Why would you not want to wear shoes that are comfortable? I know you as Yam. How do I say your actual name, dude?
It's got to sing it, man. Like, you got to look at it. Like, don't be scared and just go for it. And often I think people get to a better output. It sounds like Nyambe Sumbwanyambe, which means first name Nyambe, God.
Yeah.
Surname Sumbwanyambe, son of God. So Sumbwa is like muck or or Vander, all of those type of things, son of.
Yeah.
To sit there with our parents going, surely you could have come up with something a little bit different. Like, it's like being David Davidson or something like that. It's like, come on now.
Right.
Alas.
I love it though, because it has been something that I always I've thought of over the years of, like, you know, I've got various different friends from various different cultures, and they've always kind of got a bit of a nickname, because I always like to say, like, you know, Brits, we generally go abroad and we speak English, and, you know, so I feel like, you know, I wanted to know exactly how. So say it again for me. So I'm never going to repeat it properly.
Well, you might do in the next 5 seconds. Nyambe Sumbwanyambe. Your turn.
Nyambe Sumbwanyambe.
So not far off. Nyambe.
Nyambe.
Sumbwanyambe.
Sumbwanyambe.
Sumbwa. Yeah, that way. You see you in the face. You went.
Oh.
Sumbwa.
Sumbwanyambe.
Ah.
That feels like I don't know. It feels like quite warrior type when you say that.
I'm a lover, me, man. I'm not sure about the warrior, or at least that's what I'm going to say on here, right?
Amazing, dude. So, dude, tell me a little bit more about, like, you know, who Yam is, and, you know, yeah, I'd love to know a little bit more and explore a bit more about, like, who you are. And I know your company name is the Black Sherpa, and we've just had this conversation off there, but black coffee lover as well. So we are definitely in the right team.
Black everything, right? That's how we roll. I'd never start with the business stuff.
Yeah.
I'm a really proud husband. I'm ecstatic to be father of 2 little rascal children who, like I've said, you'll probably see at some point over the next hour, they'll jump in. It's half term for us right here. So the fact that they're so quiet right now is mysterious. I don't know what the wife is doing to them. Sometimes I get worried and think, do I need to go and check on them? But we'll leave them for now. I'm a big Arsenal fan. It's a good time for us right now, so I'll definitely crawl that in. Like, I am so enjoying being the most unbearable human being right now, and very hopeful that Saturday goes to plan, because I don't know what I'm going to do with the European Championship as well as the league. It's going to be a very special thing.
Amazing.
I'm a Yorkshireman, so I live in Hull now. I grew up in Grimsby, went to university in Leeds, so I spent most of my life there. I've worked in the pharmaceutical industry for most of my career, 20 years at an organisation called MSD or Merck. It's one of the leading pharmaceutical organisations. Over the last year, I've started to build my own business, which, as you referenced earlier on, was the Black Sherpa, which is a combination of a lot of the work that I've done for a pharmaceutical organisation for many years. I've always been focused on people, talent, or the people side of business, which I often believe is the biggest asset that organisations have. So whether that's about how effectively that we train them, how we make sure we attract the right ones in the first place, and if we get them there, how do we make sure we keep them, nurture them, grow them? And as part of that work, particularly towards the end of my time at MSD and Merck, part of my focus was on helping underrepresented, underserved talent to be at their best. So I'm trying to do a lot of that good stuff on my own terms now, with a real focus on people, performers as culture. Although people want to push me into that ED&I category, which I don't mind, I'll hold it. But I always sort of see that ED&I as a really small but important part of what really makes organisations work.
What's ED&I?
Equity, diversity, and inclusion. I love the fact that you're just doing that to expand the topic. Or did you not know?
No, I had no idea.
Oh, okay, cool. Even better. Nice,
which is weird, because I've got a mate of mine who used to work in that kind of that sector. So I'm like, oh, okay, maybe I didn't know that's what it was called.
So I always, in my mind, that ED&I focus, or equity, diversity, inclusion, is part of what makes organisations a great place to be. If you want to get people into a space and them to actually want to come and turn up and do the work and generate money as a result of the time that they spend with you,
Yeah.
then often you have to really think hard about how do you make that space attractive to lots of different types of people. And ultimately you want lots of different type of people in there, because what we're really striving for is diversity of thought, diversity of experiences, which allow us to be more innovative, allow us to deliver results to more of the people that are potentially going to spend money on whatever it is that you're building. So in amongst all of that organizational stuff, I think the thing that's always had me is the world is pretty unfair.
Mhm.
It's always going to be unfair, and that's the way of life. But in amongst that unfairness, if you can see what those disparities are, those issues or the challenges are, as an individual, there's usually things that you can do that give you better opportunities or position you for better opportunities. And I really focus a lot of my time and effort on helping people to do that right now, knowing that if they can do it for themselves, they might be able to help and support other people around it. And while there's so many amazing people doing their best to make organizations better, fairer, and more appropriate for more people, while still delivering what's important to them, you know, getting to the point where everything is fair will never come. so,
Yeah.
so while people are doing that work, I want to sort of work at the other side of it, where we can help people get on and really make a difference under their own steam.
I love that, man. There's something I really want to touch on before we get any further, is the fact that I asked you about like who you were, what you do, mentioned the Black Sherpa, and you led straight away with the family, man. I love that, because that for me is like, is, as you know, is really important. I'd love to know from you, like, just a little like wrap up of what you've just been saying there. Like, what does work-life harmony mean for Yam? Because like, I feel like for me, there was like this really lovely like balance there. Obviously in the middle there was a little bit of an Arsenal excitement, and I'd love to know what that means for you, like for work-life harmony.
I like the fact that you use harmony instead of balance. I think the reality is it's chaos.
Yeah.
And I'm really comfortable like swimming in the chaos, because I think that's what life is. And I also think that's where all the special thing actually happens. So particularly in our house, when I sort of think about the changes that we've made, moving away from a corporate role, which was probably a little bit more structured, reliable, clear in terms of where the focus is, the last year, particularly, my working habits have probably become a little bit more extreme. I've always worked long, hard hours, but also as a result of that, been able to really enjoy myself and do special stuff with my family, which is why I go to work in the first place. Where I am right now, I have to work probably a little bit harder to try and find some of that harmony. And as a family, we've made different choices that have allowed me to start a business, but amidst that chaos, I've got a wife that's ridiculously understanding and supportive, that enables me to make the choices to try and start a business, which if it is successful down the line, I'm sure will pay us back in lots of different ways. But right now, we've got a lot of work to get towards that bit. And then I've got two amazing kids, and I say amazing, they're a nightmare in the house, but they're unbelievable outside of the house. But like they're genuinely my source of energy. Like they're unreal. Like at 8 and 6 still, just brilliant company, brilliant to be around, good crack. And I think it's nice, even as you sort of say, like days like today when they're in the house, it's a little bit of a reminder of why you're doing all this stuff. So just going back to there's no harmony, there's chaos.
I
But
love
just
that.
genuinely really enjoy the chaos, man.
Harmonic chaos. I love that.
We have got another member of the family, as we sort of said earlier on. We've got a dog called Dexter, who's a
Dexter.
GSP, like, what, 10 now. You know, they say they get older and they're supposed to calm down. We didn't get that.
Yeah.
But he was like our first, I was going to call him an experiment. He wasn't the first experiment. The first experiment was some fish, actually, just to sort of see if we could manage to keep something alive. We had some tropical fish, which didn't really work. Like we replaced them on a regular basis. The tank looked beautiful, but the fish didn't really last that long. So the dog has been a better test in terms of preserving life for a long period of time before we got to the children. So yeah, it was probably good that we had those little stages before we got to where we are now.
I love that you said that, because my wife and I had fish before we had a dog. We broke our fish tank and it just exploded. But we just sat there watching TV and the fish tanks went bang, and we had this proper like save the fish. And then we had a dog. We went through all our IVF and everything, and our dog was our kind of savior for us, because it was like, okay, we've gone through all this stress, and it was that. And I think I'm sure you're going to probably agree with me on this, but the dog is the one person in the house who's like the most loyal person ever, but probably would take my pizza off my plate if it was there
All day long. Can't trust them with food, not ours, that's a fact. But Yeah, I don't think it's not necessarily just about loyal, but I think they have an amazing calming effect. We were never allowed dogs when we were kids. Come from a Zambian household where actually dogs lived outside. They weren't like pets; they were there for
Hmm.
protection. And like even as we got Dexter, who's I just even remember my dad like when we first got him in, like the cutest puppy you could ever imagine. And he's so not dogs. He's that black guy that's not having dogs. So he's
Yeah,
literally
yeah,
kicking away this gorgeous little puppy. You're like, you can't do that to a puppy. What's wrong with you, man? But I don't think a dog would have survived my childhood home because that was proper chaos. This is like
yeah,
a layer
yeah,
down from that level of chaos. But we always screamed and shouted that we wanted dogs, and so happy like with my partner, like she'd always had Weimaranas when she was younger. We lived in a flat for a long time, and we was always pretty much as soon as we get a house, we've got a bit more space. The first thing that we'll do is get a dog, and like literally as soon as we got the house, the dog was there and ready to go, which is mental. But the best thing that we've ever done. Like the connection, the calming, like regardless of what's going on, they're pretty steady. And I think it's nuts that you complain and scream about them when they're being noisy or doing the things that you don't want to do. But
yeah,
it's such a small proportion of the time. The majority of the time,
yeah,
they're not doing anything. They're just chilled and they're relaxed. They're resting. They're ready for you to come and play with them or do whatever the case might be.
yeah.
Yeah, special, man.
You could have a bad day at work, and the dog is still happy to see you when you get in.
Yeah, that wagging tail, right? Take me for a walk.
Yeah, although it was I think it was Jeffro, the comedian, who used to say he used to tie the tail of his dog to his back leg, so there was no apparent sign of welcome when the mother-in-law came around, which always used to make me make me laugh. Amazing, amazing. So dude, tell me then, because obviously, being a dad, is there like something like as a dad that I know you said your children are 6 and 8. Yeah, yeah. So you haven't hit the hormone stage yet, then.
Don't know. I think there's definitely some things like circulated.
So is there something as a dad you kind of wish that you knew at the very start?
Mate, if you knew it all, would you do it? Like, yeah, nah. Do you know what? Genuinely, I spend a lot of time focused on leadership as part of the work that I do, but actually my favorite type of leadership is parenthood and fatherhood.
Hmm.
It's a massive privilege and one that not everybody gets the opportunity to do, right? You know, you shared earlier on, you went through IVF. I think fatherhood has given me so many lessons. It really helped me sort of focus and change my mind around the type of career I want to have and why I'm focused on work and how I want to sort of conduct myself in that space. But ultimately, it crystallizes your priorities. It really makes you start to question like your values, who you are, and actually how you live to those values. Because again, as you said earlier on, your kids really pick up on what you do and not necessarily what you say. And I think it's not necessarily what I wish I knew, but I think the observation is there's so many aspects of life um, that you just don't get access to until you are a parent. Like, you know, you don't hear about your friends that are struggling to have children and not screaming and shouting about the pain that they're going through, the IVF experience
Yeah,
for lots of different reasons, right? And I know like some of those conversations amongst my closest friends only became a conversation once we had our own children. Um, Same in the workplace, right? There's a level of those conversations that you don't get access to. There's a whole list of issues or challenges that you try to take on that have just never been sort of a thing. So I think there's just that's what it is. It's that exposure to new and different things that you get access to as part of parenthood. And that, I think it's a shame. I think if there were ways to encourage people to be more open and to learn about more aspects of that, particularly as a man, right? I think women are probably a little bit better at these type of conversations, but actually the reality is, where are the men's spaces to get into that conversation, that chat? I think there's some brilliant organizations doing work around this type of thing now. I'm very close to the likes of Dope Black Dads who are really sort of holding space for the conversation about blackness and fatherhood, which I think is really important. But
yeah, yeah,
there's never an EBIG for men at workplace or for the dads.
yeah, yeah,
And I get why in some reasons, but actually the same token, it's a bit of a shame. And like even beyond there, like I always have like this mindset about what are the things I love about the work I do right now is creating a space for people to have the conversations that they really should, but maybe there isn't always a space to have them. And the biggest shame that I often see is so many people have got people around them that would help and support them and talk about the hardest things if they just invited them in, but you've got to take that first step. So actually a big part of my work is how do we help people to feel more comfortable, build the muscles where they can start talking about the stuff that really matter. And the reality is for men, and I'll talk about me and my group right now, we have a great time in each other's company, but do we really often talk about the things that really matter most? Nah. We'll sit in semi-silence next to each other thinking about it, but it doesn't happen as often as it maybe should do, that we really talk about the things that are going on, the pains, the struggles, the challenges, in a way that we could potentially help and support each other.
I love that. I can't say I resonate with that anymore because it's phenomenal when you think about it. We went through IVF 2009, 2010. I remember sitting in the waiting room. I'm sitting in a waiting room, me and my wife, me and this other couple, another couple, all the way around. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, the fish in here must have some amazing stories. Because, we're all going in there in this place and no one's talking to anyone, yet we're all going through IVF and fertility treatment. And there's a particular test that, us men have to go through when it comes to IVF at the early stages. And there's all these guys in there sat there almost sitting around, don't make eye contact. And all I want to say is, right, guys, the race is on. Who can come out the quickest? Do you know what I mean? Because I want to make it fun. I want to make it like I want to be in this room with people that go, look, dude, I know this is fucking awkward, but we got to do this. This is part of our journey, but no one's talking and you're all just sat there like complete and utter silence. And it's mad because the women could help the women, the guys could help the guys. And then at the end of it, you all walk out and it's all very, and that's the thing I think in life, isn't it? It's like people just don't share their experiences enough because we're all going through different stuff, right?
So, I haven't done IVF. What's the test, bro? Again, you see, it's easy to assume that people know and I don't.
It's the knuckle shuffle in private.
Oh, nice terminology. I like the way you've done that.
The sperm test, where I remember being in a fertility clinic that we started ours, and I remember being the guy who said, or went in, because obviously you're like, I actually have to say, I never wanted anything more than it to be my problem. I wish it was me that had the problem, because I know how beautiful it is. That experience for a woman carrying a child, it's just something that I know that connection is what gets taken away the most in a fertility sort of scenario. And I remember going in and getting my results, and I was nervous that I didn't want it to be me, but at the same time I also wanted it to be me. It was like a double-edged sword kind of thing. Anyway, when they said, your results back, and you've got 258 million sperm swimming in the right direction, and me being me went, makes sense. And she said, what do you mean? I said, well, it took you 2 weeks to count them, didn't it? That's why it's taken so long for the results. And I just said it straight laced, and the woman was like, I don't know if I should laugh or not. I was like, it's funny, right? And I went, that's a good count, right? And she went, yeah, that's good. I was like, oh, good.
And what was your wife saying while you was making that joke?
She's used to me, so she knew something like that was about to come out. So.
Yeah, I think that's it, right? It's how do you humanize these moments, and it's mental as we start this conversation, which I think is the whole joy of podcasts like this is you don't know where the conversation is going to go. You kind of flow with it.
If I planned this podcast, it would never be the podcast it is.
Well, you can see that already, man. I listening to what you're sharing right now, we've come together through Connection Through the Whole, community built by Leah Turner, and I've been in that space for a year. I'm also a community builder myself, but actually one of the things that drew me to you is you're like the kind of glue within a community that's always sharing something, whether it's the energy, whether it's the fun involved, you're commenting, you're part of building sort of culture and conversation and in lots of different spaces. And when I was sort of figuring out my own community, there's a bit of me sort of thinking, how do I either get Andy's or how do I help Andy's be Andy's in my space? Because I think you need that, and you're only ever going to have a few people that do that, but it's so powerful for everybody else. And you do the same here, right, on this podcast. You're getting people in and you're just creating a space where the most organic and weird conversations come up based on God knows what. So again, I'm really surprised that our conversation has started where it has. I'm happy that it has. But I was kind of coming in today thinking, I had a few questions for you because I like to be prepared for stuff like this. And I looked over your podcasts, and there's so many different conversations, so many different people, so many different topics that you're touching on. And I was like, okay, cool. What is he trying to do? Like, where is he trying to go with the conversations that he's holding? The thing that connected them all together is they were brilliant conversations. You've got a really unique power to hold people in a space where they probably share a little bit more than they want to. And that's what, every podcaster wants to be able to do. How do you get people to talk about things properly? So I think, that's pretty cool. But as you particularly changed the name, I thought it'd be really cool to hear from you. Like, what are you trying to do with this space, man? What's your hopes and dreams for it? And I want to know how I can help you with it.
Do you know what's really funny? You say that, and as soon as you said it, and obviously many people I was going to change the name and just keep it quiet and like keep it on the side. And then I was like, Illimitable for me, and I know you talk about limitations as well, is about living your life without limitations. And a big thing for me is I talk to people on a daily basis, my clients who I work with, and I could be talking to, and we're going to use this as an example, I could be talking to someone who works in drug and alcohol abuse, and I could be talking with someone who's a fitness coach. They are still either a dad or a husband or a family man or family, a wife, or, whatever that kind of combination is. But they're all doing these different experiences. And like we've just said there, and it's something that you, like, weirdly, I'm almost having an epiphany bridge moment as we're talking, which is always quite exciting. But we've all got different experiences that we can share with each other and that can actually help each other. I've got people on the podcast who've talked about like getting hold of a gun because someone's like potentially like threatening them for lots and lots of money. And then I've got someone who's talking about, having a breakthrough working with me as their coach. And for me, it's like, where do you get to have a space where you can have those open conversations?
Yeah.
In a coaching scenario, you do, and a lot of what people talk about now on the podcast, is almost, I would say sometimes just below the surface. But what I do in coaching is go a lot like lower. So I feel like people get to kind of share their stories. And I think like for me, it's like, where else do you get to, I mean, like, I'm having that moment where I'm like, we were just talking about like open conversation. I'm like, shit, man, that's what it is, isn't it? That's what it is.
No limits on the conversation. What's the trick to help people go lower? How you get down there?
Do you know what? Silence.
Okay.
Because I feel like when you give people the space to talk, you'll probably notice if we look at this first question that we answered, I asked you quite a few open questions within a series of questions, and you just ran. I just shut up. And for me, it was like let you kind of have your space. I love to share my experiences as well, because even though we just talked about open conversation and stuff like that, and we ended up having a moment where I told you about a scenario that I've been in, which was where I didn't experience good open conversation, and I was in a room full of people who are going through the same thing. And for me, I feel like it's, even though we haven't been through the same, there'll be some similarities in different people's lives and conversations, which, you talking about, I watched a clip of yours. It was about I think it was about your children's names.
Oh, okay.
I watched that clip and I was like, I like going back to that. Do you know what I mean? I was like, oh my God, like, wow, like what decisions do our parents make that they assume that we are going to make the same decisions? And again, for me, it's those things that even now, I'm going to literally just do another comparison. Like, things my mum has said to me because she's assumed that's the way I should do it. And it's the thing, it's like, I think it's really great when we can have these conversations that we can then explore our own lives, really.
Yeah, mate, it's like I say, a real superpower, and that's mental. That bit that you talk to there is, it's not. I think it's the same in lots of ways, but for me, in particular, there's a real cultural difference between my generation and my parents' generation and beyond there. And they chose to move from one country, Zambia, to the UK. I often talk about this whole idea of third culture kid and some of the issues or challenges that cause in terms of how you see the world and the tensions that you have within families. But for parents like my parents, they move from a country like Zambia where they've had, great lives. They're doing really well. Everything that's helped them to get to the point that they have is social proof of good parenting, good environment, good connection. So when you have your own kids, obviously your viewpoint is, how do I replicate that stuff for my own children? But for them particularly, that's a bit harder because the children are being brought up in a different culture. So, my parents might have expected certain things from me, my brothers, my sisters, that our friends' parents wouldn't expect from them. So, um, kids are clever, as we know, and they question everything. So if your parents are asking you to live a certain way, dress a certain way, eat a certain way, and everybody else around you is doing something different, your parents look like the problem or like they're wrong. But
Mm-hmm.
actually, what they're asking you to do is just out of context from what is normal where they come from. So you end up with this weird tension where you question your parents even more so than you might do. And that, I think, creates a tension for many people, particularly that have emigrated or moved in that way, particularly to such different cultures. So the whole idea that the third culture kid is, that child is now that third culture who's trying to assimilate and understand how to be visible, present, respectful, and thrive in two different cultures and bring them into the
Yeah.
same space. I think that's an interesting thing in itself. Positives, cons. I think it potentially helps you to be able to be a bit more flexible in your character, to be able to communicate in different ways, to observe and see things that some people might not do. But by the same token, it might mean that you get into this whole idea of like code switching or not being yourself or trying to be what you assume that people potentially want, and that can have its negative impacts and consequences as well. So I could go on to a lot more detail around it, but it's just mad how those little experiences change. And going back to my point, and I've gone on a little bit here, and you'll get used to that. I think the video you talked about was like naming our children, and like genuinely, like where we come from. My parents would have had a big impact on naming the grandchildren, particularly my son, who's our firstborn, their
Mm-hmm.
first grandchild. Um, And like my wife, who is white Yorkshire woman from Hull, that is the reason why I'm in Hull now. Yeah, I love Hull. I love Hull, by the way. Other football good news at the weekend. Obviously, they were promoted to the Premier League. There's so much good stuff going on around here right now. But I sort of think about the kids that we've got. We've dreamt about kids for all of our life.
Mm-hmm.
Naming them was always going to be like an important part of the process. And who am I to change that or take that away from her is something that she's looked forward to. So as always, we discussed and we had conversations about what we wanted. We always knew that if we had a boy, we'd want to well, it's not that we didn't care, but he's going to carry a name like Sumbwanyambe. So actually his heritage will carry in that surname. So there
Yeah.
wasn't maybe as much as a thing around what is his first or middle name. But if we had a daughter, we was always really strong that we wanted to make sure that we had a Zambian middle name because her name potentially might change through marriage or whatever the case might be. And that we talked to our parents, but then as always, we made our own decisions.
Mm-hmm.
And they were kind of like, really, even to the point, said my boy's Theo or Theodore. And when he was named, like, they were kind of, oh, that's kind of like Bupe, which is like a Zambian name. And they started trying to call him. We were like, no, his name's
No.
Theo. I like, I'm saying that with a smile on my face because that was with love, right? They just try
Yeah,
to
of
be part
course.
of it. And I get it and understand it. But no, as always, I think it's important to have good, strong boundaries and be able to communicate and talk about these things. That's what makes the world go around. But yeah, it's just, that's what life is. And I'm sure when our kids are older, there'll be God knows whatever situations where we're thinking, hang on a minute, we want our way. Well, what's going on here?
Yeah. It'll probably be like the latest version of TikTok. It'll be like, oh yeah, we just had a poll, and the kid's now called Cedric because that's what someone wanted to vote for.
Name, Cedric,
Yeah, it's a good name, isn't it?
here for it.
I want. Do you know what I want? I want Ethel to come back. I want Ethel. I want Winifred. I want all those old little old lady names to come back.
I think there's a movement for it. I
Yeah.
think there's a real feel for names like that carry stories and heritage and
Do you know
recognisable.
what?
I'm here
Yeah.
for it.
Yeah. Yeah. I love
When do
that,
we get
man.
to the point when we bring stuff like Gary back? When's that happening?
I mean, Karen. I mean, I feel sorry. I feel sorry for anyone called Karen because I've never got a problem with Karen, and I'm like, oh, right,
It's been dubbed.
yeah. So, I love that, man. Dude, you did you answer? Did I answer all your questions? I'm now confused. I'm like, well, you asked me a question. That I love it when that gets thrown out.
Yeah, so tell me about the name change. Like you've gone from that whole idea of like chaos and coffees to
Well,
Illimitable.
so about 10 minutes ago, I asked Yam about Work Life Harmony, and he went straight in with chaos. So
Not to breathe.
coffee, chaos, and confidence for me. When I first launched my podcast, I launched my podcast. I was like, I love coffee. I want it to be all about coffee because I want it to be a coffee shop scenario. I want to be sat in a coffee shop with. I was manifesting Yam. I was like, I want to be sat in a coffee shop with Yam, having a coffee, talking shit basically, about the chaotic life that we live in, but confidently talking about what we talk about. And the Coffee, Chaos and Confidence podcast, let's be honest, is quite a long name, isn't it? And as much as it sort of is exactly what it said on the tin, for me, it didn't sort of sit on all the time. It felt like I always had to kind of explain what it was about. Whereas for me, with my Illimitable brand, I kind of realized that like my Illimitable means to, without limitations. So for me, it was like, actually, why am I overcomplicating a podcast that actually is based on my sort of story? I genuinely have this vision in my head of like, I'd love to open the Illimitable coffee shop. Because that for me is like the hub of the heart of, I joke, but when people say about, drinking too much coffee, I'm like, I don't drink too much coffee now because of the way I make my coffee. I love the way I make my coffee. It's all built on the V60 pour over in the morning. I love that moment of watching the bloom come up. So for me, it's that whole like storytelling thing. So I was like, the reason I went back to wanted to go just to call it to Illimitable podcast, it's because when I very, 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 very first looked at setting up my podcast, I wanted to call it the Illimitable Podcast. And there was another podcast that was kind of out there. And I was like, and I was like, but mine's the Illimitable Podcast. My brand's Illimitable. I'm like, why am I shying away from it? Like, and it's, there's no threat to me. And that person hadn't even had a podcast episode out for like 3 or 4 years. So I'm like, well, I can just be me, right? That's who I am. That's who my brand is. So yeah, so I wanted to then switch it back in, but for me, the heart of it is still the Coffee, Chaos and Confidence chat, because that's what it's all about, essentially.
Cool. So I think there's a fascinating bit around exploring people's limitations, and there's probably a really big crossover in terms of a lot of work that we do. Like, we talk about ascending without limits, and I think there's a few things that commonly get in the way of people in terms of their performance, their happiness, their connection. As I sort of think through where you are right now, what's coming to my mind, this is me just being really like nerdy on this, because again, I'd love to go back to my podcasting days, and I can't wait until I can do it again. Just haven't quite got the capacity to fit it in.
Yeah.
Who would be like the perfect guest for your podcast? If you used to sort of say, there's like, you used to watch Friends where like Ross had like the girls he's allowed to cheat on, but they're like the laminated.
Wow, it's like we are connected, man. I mean, like, I love Friends. Like,
right.
Yeah.
So who's on the laminated list of perfect guests for this show? Who'd be on there?
Well, there's one guy who I have talked about in the early stages who I'd love to get on. Is a guy called Fatherhood, who basically, he's a guy who quite a few years back, I kind of got into watching YouTube videos. I watched the Joe Wicks video. I'd love to get Fatherhood on. I've watched that guy online. He was on a Joe Wicks video in the background, I think when Joe Wicks used to have his studio in Richmond. And he was, I've got this guy in today, Mr. PMA, and I've always admired him. Met him a few times now. We've kind of crossed over with like me judging fitness comps like Turf Games and like a couple of things like High Rocks and stuff. So I was a head judge for High Rocks for a couple of years. And it was like he's such a lovely guy. When I first was watching him online, it was just him and his wife. Now it's him, his wife. He's got 2 kids, and I love his story. So he's definitely on my hit list. Reminds me, I'm going to have to send him another message because he's come up a couple of times on my podcast now. Almost feel like we need to get a campaign going. Do you know what? There are, if we were to go for a famous person, I always feel like this is the dead or alive moment. I'd love to have a chat with Lenny Kravitz. That would be the guy, because that's a guy who very spiritual, very grounded. He's 100% a family man. He's a dad. He's a businessman. He's an entrepreneur. And I don't know if you've ever read his autobiography, but it's like, I mean, it's great because it stops at Let Love Rule. So you're like, oh my God, you can't leave me at let love rule. So like, that's the earliest, his story is just amazing. So he'd be amazing. Oh, do you know what? I don't know if I've got a top 5 right now. I'm just trying to think, like, who
You
would
don't
be
need
on
to
that
get to
laminated
5.
list.
Don't be limited by my rules, man. Just whatever it is.
Let's just think, like, I'm now thinking, like, if there was a female I'd like to interview on my podcast, I'd love to get Davina McCall on, actually. Her story, I don't know if you ever listened to her story about her mum and her being dressed outside, standing outside a nightclub in France whilst her mum's in there. And, that would just be, I'd love to know, because that's someone who, from my mind, has come from somewhere which, like, felt pretty freaking hard. And, like, to the success she's gone through now, was the, new marriage and all this. It's like, it just kind of proves that, for me, fighting is, it doesn't always have to be a fight. Sometimes it's like, it's pivotal changes in life, isn't it? And that can lead to different avenues of success and so forth. So she'd be a really interesting one to talk to
She
as well.
would, man. Honestly, you're talking about her, and it's interesting what people might know her for. And obviously, Big Brother was massive for her, but I still think of her as a street mate. Did you used to watch that?
Yeah. I remember she did Street Mate in Extra, and I was like, oh my God, wow, she's local to me.
I used to love that. Like, that was before, like, the stuff that we see on TV now, but, like, she's one of them, whatever the pain that she's been through is giving her that unique ability to be able to connect with people on so many different levels, to be able to project herself in a way that people are interested, intrigued, and want to listen.
She's definitely got a fuel in her fire, isn't she? It's like, I mean, she's been through so much with what she's been through in life, medically recently as well. And I watched an interview with her and Peter Crone. I don't know if you've seen that. There's on her podcast at the end of the episode, there's a clip where she talks, and I've talked about this on the podcast as well, where she talks about feeling alone, basically. When everyone was kind of supporting her, she had WhatsApp messages when she was going through, I think it was her brain tumor, and she had all these people that were kind of like sending her love, sending her messages, and she was like, I still felt so alone. And he brought it back to like when she was a kid and she was, sort of feeling abandoned by her mother and stuff. And it's like, it's for me, it's incredible. And this is something I experience a lot with my clients, is the fact that people go through moments in life and they hold back on things, but they hold back on them because of something that happened in the past. And I feel like, her story is another one of those classic moments where, yes, certain things have held her back, but she's managed to move forward with it. So yeah, she'd be a really interesting one as well.
I see a lot of that in my work as well. So much of ours is focused on careers and how people navigate what can be challenging work environments, complex work environments. I think there's a couple of things. Like, one, people don't know what they don't know. So actually, a big part of my fight is actually, how do you shine a light on the unwritten curriculum? But then the other thing that you see people held back all the time is negative experiences in a different context that aren't really a factor in the thing that you're going through right now. And don't get me wrong, those experiences can leave scars. But you've got to try and find ways to take every experience, every opportunity, it's on merits, and then make choices that allow you to move forward or insert yourself in a situation or an opportunity and give yourself that chance. People don't give themselves a chance because they choose to opt out because it feels hard, difficult, exposing, whatever the chance might be. So I think there's definitely something in there around how do you help people to remove the limitations that stop them from being available to the opportunities that might be there for them. And I think a lot of people count themselves out before it's even a thing, which is such a shame.
Yeah. And it works in both ways as well, I mean, I've known people that have done something that's been super successful. They've moved on to a different path and then gone, whoa, I'm not going to be successful like that again. So, it's mad the way the mind works, right?
Yeah. What, against you, for you?
Yeah. Everything.
So again, it's not me asking the questions here, but I feel like I'm falling into a little bit because you've got me interested as well.
I love it. I'm grateful for the questions. I really enjoy it.
What do you see as maybe the common limitations that, if we're able to get rid of, would have like a profound effect on how people live their lives?
What is a common limitation?
Yeah. What are the things that you're seeing that people are repeatedly coming to you with or discussing or you're helping people through? Yeah, I'm always interested about what's core and common. So what are the limitations that would make us illimitable? What are the things that we potentially should be shining a light on that would help people
Do you
think
see the
about that?
gulp then?
Yeah.
I
It's
went,
like,
it's the shit our parents have told us.
okay.
It's the things that as a kid, oh, he's just like his dad. Or, oh yeah, I mean, no, I've got one from my school. Like, I mean, that kind of moment, my mum actually brought this up to me recently, and I've actually named it on my life audit that I've got, which is the lights are on, no one's home. And basically that's what was on my school report. And it's those things that, like, maybe from our childhood, maybe as we're growing up, my mum's a classic example. She used to say, as long as you've got enough money to pay the bills. So in my mind, I've always had this thing of, as long as I paid the bills, that's okay. Like, I think there's a lot of things that particularly, like, we've been molded in a way. And again, like you just said, you touched on something earlier on. You said, like, they do stuff out of love. And they do these things out of love. And we're probably embedding some limitations in our own children. I feel like maybe times have changed a little bit now in the sense of the way we do stuff. But I think there's so many things that have cropped up in people's lives, that have been held back from something that's happened like years ago as a result of somebody else probably wanting to keep you safe.
Mm.
And sometimes that safety thing has actually meant, like, almost a case of, okay, well, we're going to stay here because we're going to stay safe. And I think, like, that's something that people where they are now feel safer than where they don't know. They want to be in that situation, don't they? It's like, oh, I want to explore this, but I'm okay here. So if I stay here,
Yeah.
I'm safe. And I think it's that safety barrier. And I feel like a lot of that has come from previous, whether it's nurture, whether it's love, hate, whatever it's come from, but a lot of that has come in those early years. And I know people talk about, things happening up to, most of your thought patterns and limitations and stuff are kind of embedded in you up to the age of 7. Um, and I remember when my daughter was younger, and I remember, like, when she was like, I remember this moment thinking, right, so from now onwards, I've got to really make a really positive effort to, like, she's eight now. I've got to make a positive effort. So I wonder what limitations she's had. That's when she went through all of her. She had hip dysplasia. She had operations. She was in pneumonia, and it's all of those moments where when you're a parent, you think, right, what can I do to make sure I keep her safe? And that's the thing. I think a lot of that comes from love, doesn't it? But can also be quite restrictive.
You can't get away from those things as well. You made me think about a couple of things. One is how do you remove that? And maybe the answer is therapy. I have to sort of think, particularly when I was podcasting, one of the things that always caught me, you'd have conversations with people, and if
This thing here is fucking amazing.
get it out of your head, write it down.
Write it down. Honestly, this is coming from someone who hated writing at school. Like, in fact, actually, I'm going to tell you this right now, because I literally only about 12 hours ago, which was, just last night, I've just created a new planner. I've had a planner on Amazon for a couple of years, and I've created it for me. I didn't create it for anyone else. I created it 100% for me because I couldn't find what I wanted. And now I've kind of tweaked it over a couple of years of using this physical planner. And I have a bit of a ritual with my wife that every sort of 6 months or so, my wife and I get our planners and we burn them in the garden. Probably not good for the environment. I'm really sorry. But at the end of the day, for me, it's like I write down my thoughts and my feelings every day. And that sounds like, a bit like 9-year-old girl writing in a diary. And if that's what people think, great. But it has changed my life like you would not believe. And to the point, because it's given me the opportunity to openly explore conversations with myself of, like, how I feel today and, like, the different things that I do, it allowed me to, and I don't even know if I've talked about this on the podcast before, but it allowed, through my own journaling, I got my daughter a little journal because she wanted to do what daddy was doing. Do you know what? It's leading by example. She was watching what I was doing. And that conversation with her one day, with about an emotion of how she was feeling, which is why the question is like, what emotions did I feel today is in my planner, because through writing down how I was feeling, it allowed my daughter to talk about the loss of our dog that we lost 4 or 5 years ago, which resulted in her saying, Daddy, I want to call Childline. Now, as a parent, you go, oh my God, what do you want to call Childline for? But actually, they help with so many different things. So for me, this thing here was the most valuable thing ever, because it meant that we just got that moment to explore how we were feeling, and just getting stuff down on paper, whether you write it down, throw it away, eat it, burn it, whatever you need to do with it. And again, comes back to that thing with friends, doesn't it? What did they do? They wrote all of these notes on Valentine's Day, put them in a pot and burnt them. So it's
I think
getting those
there's
feelings
definitely
down.
something in that, right? People often say that we're not our thoughts, but actually as humans, we have so many thoughts. And I think the whole idea of writing down means that you can look at them, you can challenge them, you can internalize the things that you want and positive and serving you.
Yeah.
The things that aren't, you can get rid of them, you can burn them, you can put them in the bin, which I think is a really powerful thing as well. And I get into, I do like the 6-minute journal. I don't do it consistently. I do it sometimes, I come out of it. But the one thing from that 6-minute journal that I always love is the gratitude practice, being able to write down, just 3 things that you're grateful for. And actually even better than that, every now and again, if it's a person, like telling them, getting into that habit, I just
Out of
think is so
curiosity,
powerful.
when did you write the gratitude? Was the gratitude in the morning or the evening?
So with 6-minute journal, like in the morning you get like an intention, in the evening you get like your gratitude.
So
if you're going to do it by the rules, right?
Yeah. So the reason I switched mine up is because every day I want to start with a day of like, what am I actually grateful for?
Yeah.
And then at the end of the day, so I've got 3 reasons to be grateful, 3 wins of the day. So the 3 wins go at the end, the gratitude goes in the morning, because I start with feeling grateful.
Yeah.
And for me, it's like, do you know how many times like I've written the word music? I am just so grateful for the way music makes me feel. I love playing it. I love my daughter's singing. And we've got a running joke in our family at the moment, which is probably one day will listen to this podcast and kill me for, but we call it the plop concert, because whenever she's sat on the toilet, she is singing her little heart out. And do you know what? She's never happier than when she's having a poo. And it's, you know what I mean? It's like, for me, I'm so grateful for music. I'm grateful for the way it makes us feel. It changes our, everything about it. And for me, it is that moment, and if I have a moment in the morning where I'm like, I don't know what I'm grateful for, 9 times out of 10, I'll put some music on and go, oh, bloody hell, I'm grateful for music. So I think for me is, gratitude in the morning is just like a big thing for me. And then celebrating those wins in the evening is so important.
Yeah, definitely hear that. And again, such a simple practice, right? A lot cheaper than therapy, but so effective. Anybody can do it. Pen and paper, it's not a lot to go. But I think that consistency, and then knowing that doing something that will feel hard or challenging and a bit weird at first, but over time can have such a big impact on how we see the world, how we feel about ourselves, how we feel about other people. So definitely a big fan for it. I'm still want to keep on this limitations bit, and I'm thinking a bit more selfishly now, right?
No, mate, you go for it.
So I'm here. I'm thinking about my community. So often our focus in the 29K Club is helping people to navigate those unwritten rules of creators, helping them to do the work behind the work, the things that people don't tell you that help you potentially get ahead. But there's probably a few common limitations that I hear, and not like word for word, but if I gave you a couple of them, I'd be interested to sort of hear your viewpoint on those limitations.
Yeah,
you reckon?
Yeah, man. Yeah, I love this.
So if people saying something like, people like us don't do things like that, if that's the thing in their mind that they've experienced either through their childhood, through what their friends have done, through what their parents have done, and their thoughts and feelings now is people like me or people like us don't do things like that, is what's holding them back. What are your thoughts on that as a limitation?
I'm instantly excited by this question.
I've got a few more.
Yeah. So, welcome to the 19-hour episode of the Illimitable Podcast. I'm loving this. I've always wanted a part 2. So, when I say people like us don't, can you rephrase, say the question?
People like us don't do things like that.
Okay, cool. So one of my early things would be people like us. Who's us? And then I would break down who the us is. I'd be like, okay, cool. And then I would probably, in my mind, do a quick right, let's try and find someone who does do that. And I would say, like, I would maybe talk about like who inspires them, who around them, inspires you, to the point that probably what will happen is they'll be like, okay, can you just go back to that question again? Like, people like us. So remind me who you said what the people like us were? And I'm like, okay, cool. So like people like Lenny Kravitz then. Do you know what I mean? So for me, it would be that, like, let's find someone who does, or whether they're, whatever race they are, whatever, background they come from, like, is there someone who inspires you? Why do they have to be like us? They don't have to be like us. They could be someone who inspires you. And why? And my question, this one always comes in the back of me. It's like, why not me?
Yeah.
Why not me?
Yeah.
I'm an only child who neither of my parents were entrepreneurial. Rahan, last week's episode, his parents weren't entrepreneurial. He didn't come from that background. Like, the guy's got a thriving business. Like, I've been in business. I've been an entrepreneur now for 19 years. Like, my mum still, if you said, like, what do I do? She goes, oh, he does a bit of photography and I think he talks a bit on the internet. That's probably what she'd say, So it's like, why not me? I mean, I don't come from that background,
Okay.
so that would be, yeah. And I would probably find someone else who doesn't come from a why not me? Why this stuff doesn't come from, people like me don't get this. It's like, well, let's look at Davina McCall.
Yeah. I'm sort of thinking about, as you said there, even, where you went to for Lenny Kravitz, actually, if you looked hard enough or a little bit beyond what your level of awareness is, there probably are people like you doing whatever the thing might be. So I think there's definitely something around challenge that. Next one then,
Okay.
if the message that you're hearing to you're in your head is you're told all the time, don't get too big for your boots, and that's what's maybe holding you back from putting yourself forward because you don't want to be seen as arrogant or self-promoting or some Billy Big Bollocks or whatever the case might be. How do you think about a deal with that?
What's the cost to you if you stay in the small shoes?
Like
Do you
really
know what I
messed
mean?
up feet, like
Yeah, exactly. So exactly. So you're gonna mess up feet. So what's gonna feel like you're being held back, right?
mm-hmm.
So if you're if you're gonna wear small shoes, you're going to be uncomfortable. So why would you not want to wear shoes that are comfortable? And I love a metaphor, man. I love it. Do you know what? Because for me, like, metaphors are so beautiful because you could be like, oh yeah, but I'd wear these shoes. If you could wear think of a pair of shoes that you'd love right now. Is there a pair of shoes that you'd really like to wear? Yeah, cool. What is there? Do you know what sort of shoes you'd like to wear? But then I'd bring it into that moment of, okay, cool. So, like, why do you like it? Okay, because of, yeah, cool, right? To the point to go, cool, would you wear them 3 sizes too small? And then you'd go, no, why not? Because, you go, right, cool. There we go then. Just because it's so simple, man. It's so simple. But like, people just go, yeah. Good.
That's the connectivity, mate. It's a coaching superpower. I'm going to keep going. You tell me when you get bored. I thought,
Yeah, man.
I could do these all day long. So next one, somebody's got that mindset of they've been told, be grateful you're here.
I love that. Are you not grateful?
I'm not thinking about in the same perspective as you might have interpreted that.
Right.
So I'm thinking in that whole idea of you've got somebody that's looking to progress and looking for promotion, they're looking to challenge the norms around them. And actually what they're hearing is, well, actually you should be grateful that you've got the job, the role that you've got, or you're really lucky to have the opportunity, or I'm really lucky to be on this show with you right now and having a conversation. You should be grateful that you've had the invite. How are you sort of taking that thing and helping people to expand from that position?
I think that would be another one of the classic things. Like, are you not grateful? And if it's like, no, I'm not grateful, it's like, cool. So what do you want in life? Because if you're not, do you know what I mean? Like, you're like, well, actually, no, I'm not grateful. I'm not grateful for why I'm here. And I'm like, well, actually, good. What do you want? What do you want? Seriously, because it's stuff like that really gets me, because it's like when people say stuff like that, I'm like, oh, we could take it 2 ways. It'd be like, oh yeah, I suppose I should. They have given me an opportunity. And it's like, well, if you're doubting whether you're grateful you're not there or why you're there, your moment for you is actually, well, if this was your dream job and someone's saying that to you, they might be just saying like, dude, this is everything you wanted. Are you not happy? But at the same time, you might actually be getting that moment where they go, you're not, are you not grateful for where you are? It's like, well, actually, no, I'm not, because I want more. And if you want more, let's explore that. Like, almost that comment in itself could be so motivating, right?
You're good at these. Here's another. This feels really hard. Maybe it's not for me, so I'm just not going to bother.
It's really funny. The one that I know people always go, yeah, but life is hard. That's what parents say, and life is hard. Like, yeah. If it was easy, what would you do?
Less. Or would you do more?
Cool. Or would you do more? Exactly. Yeah, I think honestly, it is one of those things. Like when you say stuff like that, about it being hard, it's like, well, I I always hate that phrase. Rome wasn't built in a day, and I'm like, I don't even know how long it took them to build Rome. If I'm honest, I've got no idea. Does anyone know?
Who's they?
Exactly.
Wasn't the Romans, was it, man? Come on now.
Oh man, do you know what? I could do this for hours, and I'm forgetting that I was meant to be interviewing you about stuff, and you've turned this around. You're very clever. I'm enjoying it.
Like, you're just seeing all my flaws come out to play. Like, get really uncomfortable talking about myself, so I just make other people talk about themselves. So there's a superpower in it. I'm going to do one more, and then we're going to leave it.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Go for it.
If the thing that they've sort of heard and seen is this whole idea of like you've got to work twice as hard, let's make it really specific. Let's think of somebody from a black background where you've got parents that might sort of sit there and go, you're going to work 10 times as hard to get half as much as the white person next to you. Let's say something like that. And that's then having an impact on how you might think about the world. How do you unpack or explore that one?
Now, this for me is like something where I haven't got an experience of this cultural difference, as it were. But from someone who I haven't experienced that, but I know for a fact that at school, I didn't work as hard. And I've got friends at school who went to university, who did all they done everything they've done. And, not judging on people's jobs, but, that work in jobs now that I'm more than qualified to do, but yet they've got a degree. And I think there is every possibility for everyone who does something that comes from their true purpose and their passion and what they love, that actually they don't have to work as hard because they're doing what they love. Weirdly, we're coming back to this as well. Rahan talked last week about wanting to have a surf shop, but it was his passion and he loved it, but he didn't want to take that away he didn't want to lose that. And I think for me, it's funny that we talk about these things in life, but like he actually said at the very early stage, the reason when he was in hospitality, he realized it's actually quite easy, but he could just do it his way. So he was like, so for me, it was like, actually, he was like, I want to be by the sea. This is where I am, by the sea. This is where my purpose is. This is where my drive is. And I think it does come to that, if you work 10 times as hard, what do you think you'll get? Okay, cool. Well, what ability have we got? Where do you want to be? And what does that mean you've got to do? It doesn't, I think putting it on a scale is sometimes it's really hard to quantify sometimes that, when you put something onto a scale. It's like if I said to you, like how hard did you work yesterday? Could you put a number on it?
Yeah, like 19 out of 10 maybe. Yesterday was one of them days.
Exactly. But the thing is, for the fact of the matter is, it's like, that was yesterday, but today you probably, like, if I asked you that tomorrow, you'd be like, yeah, I just went on this podcast and just asked us loads of questions. That's actually pretty easy. It was quite cool because I was relaxed, I was chilled. And I think that's the thing, isn't it? I think for me, that comes back to that very first question of like, that limitation thing of where it comes from is if someone tells you have to work 10 times as hard, that might be a positive attribute for someone, but for most people, having to work 10 times harder than the way I see it is 10 times harder is 10 times more my ability. And like, would you not want to work to your maximum ability? So if I said to you, Yam, you should work 10 times harder tomorrow. So tomorrow you're going to do 190%. Like instead of your 19, your your night. Well, that's probably rubbish maths, isn't it? But do you know what I mean? It's like 10 times harder. I mean, tomorrow is 190 out of 10. Do you want to do that tomorrow? You don't, do you? But if I said
Do you want to do that, or do you want to sustain, or can you sustain that? I think is another thing in and around that.
I think the other question I'd probably ask you would be something along the lines of like, okay, cool. So you did 19 yesterday out of 10. That was pretty hard. Like, what would you prefer to have done yesterday, or what didn't you do yesterday that you wanted to do? Like, you know, was it have a water fight with your kids in the garden? Cool. Make sure you prioritize that tomorrow. And to me, it's like when someone says 10 times more, it's like I instantly gets my like, I just want to go fuck off. So true, isn't it? So true, man. Dude, I'm so grateful for the questions today, but I'm also very, very conscious that I want to know how people can find out more about Yam and more about how you work with people and yeah, and more, just more.
Yeah, so the business I run is the Black Sherpa, but where most of my focus is right now is building something called the 29K Club, which is a paid community that helps ambitious people, predominantly but not exclusively in the life sciences sector, to navigate the work behind the work.
Why 29?
29. So the highest peak on Earth above sea level is Everest, which is 29,000 feet. And you said earlier on about loving the whole idea around metaphors, and it's one that I come back to all the time. And when we sort of think about careers and progress in life, you know, the mountain is always a powerful metaphor that's been used forever. And what I often think is for people on those career journeys, the road is long to get to the top of any of these sort of things, right? But different people start on different places and have different routes to get to the top. They're dealing with different issues and different challenges. But
I mean, even
underrepresented,
Everest right now is proving, I don't know if you've heard in the news recently, even that they've had a massive problem that is basically making them go, oh shit, we can't do this the normal way.
And so I suppose that's the point, or that's similar to the working environment, right? The conditions change all of the time. Right now, if you sort of think about work, big organizations are restructuring and changing on a regular basis. AI is changing how people think about and operate in workplaces. Jobs are changing as a result of it. There's so many things that are the conditions that potentially change.
Yeah.
And my role is always as the Black Sherpa is to help people to navigate some of that change, and very much inspired by the Sherpas in Nepal. I can help to carry some of the load. If somebody is struggling to see where the next step might be, I can shine a light or point them in the right direction. If they fall, we can pick them back up, but ultimately they're going to have to take every step to the top. And when they get to the top and they plant that flag, I'm not going to be in the picture. It's their moment to celebrate. But most people that achieve epic things have got good people around them. And that to me is so resonant with the community in the space that I'm building, where great people are trying to figure this stuff out. And more importantly, it's the type of space where people are talking about what they're learning on the journey, where the issues are, where the challenges are, the mistakes that they've potentially made that other people can benefit from.
Yeah.
And there's an amazing story about, so Hillary and Tenzing, so first people to actually summit Everest. The thing that made the difference is all of the people that had failed before them, and had been a long list and a long line of those people, for the first time shared their experiences and shared the routes that they took, shared where things went wrong, shared the lessons, the learnings, which helped Hillary, if he was a guy from New Zealand, to plan very differently in terms of how he could take on that challenge. And the other thing that they did that was very different is to clown the local people as Sherpas. Those two things coming together in terms of local experience and understanding, but also shared knowledge from people's past experiences, is the defining factor that allowed them to achieve something that had never been done before. And then funnily enough, once they managed to do it, lots of other people did exactly the same thing. And that to me is something, or a story, that always lights me up in terms of how people can do the same in work, in life, just by, again, having the space and time to have those conversations that we said earlier on. Sometimes people don't make the space for, or don't feel confident or engaged enough to start and try it. But I find over and over again, if the conditions are right, once you start those conversations, really, really special, magical.
It's almost like one of those limiting belief phrases, you know, like money doesn't grow on trees and stuff like that. But a problem shared is a problem halved. I'm going to keep that one, because do you know what I mean? If you share stuff with people, like, that's one we can definitely keep, right?
Yeah, I'm here for that one. And it's true. And I generally sort of think, as long as you share it with somebody that's going to give you something of value potentially, because actually I've seen it the other way around where that problem is shared. And actually, this is a really good point, right? That whole idea that you talked about earlier on, right? Our parents, all of the people around us wanting to jump in and solve problems on our behalf. I think sometimes actually the biggest thing that happens in our space is people listen and then they ask questions to explore a situation in a way that gives people clarity and confidence, as
Yeah.
opposed to wanting to jump in and say, you know what I'd do or what you should do. This is it. And I think
Yeah.
there's a place for that, but that should come after you've had an opportunity to really explore an issue or a challenge.
Yeah.
And then what you can say is, yeah, I've had something similar in the past, and these are some of the things that helped me, or these are some of the mistakes that I made. Give people that information so they can then make their own choices, knowing some of it will work, some of it might not work, but they're accountable for all of it. And that's what it's all about.
Yeah, man. That's so powerful, isn't it?
Conversations are, right?
Yeah.
Connection are, humans are. That's what it's all about, man.
Exactly. I often think to myself, like, if I knew now, or if I knew then what I know now, like what would my 20s have been like? And I know it's all very easy to kind of to do that, right? But like is there? I want to wrap up because I want to ask you a couple of questions because I feel like it's time to flip the switch a bit. But like, is there something like that you maybe in your like 20s or something like that wishes you knew now about, whether it's life, business, or something that you just knew that you just think, "Do you know what, if I'd have known that 20 years ago?" And again, I know we were talking about this with being parenthood as well earlier on, but is there like, oh my God, that would have just made that a little bit easier?
I think at that age, I was so bothered about impressing absolutely everybody around me, and it
Hmm.
meant so much to me that it probably drove behaviors that didn't help me. I think I knew enough to realize that most people in around me don't really give a shit about me,
Yeah,
and I
yeah,
don't need everybody to care about me. And actually, the number of people that you really need to impress is relatively small. I think that type of thinking makes you think very differently about how you live your values, how you prioritize, where you spend your time, what you spend your time on.
yeah,
So yeah, I think there's something definitely in there around, well, actually, you don't need to impress the whole world. Like there's just a small number of people that you need who are close to you, who care for you, know exactly who they are. Think about how you surprise and delight them with how you spend your time.
yeah, man. I'm going to ask you one last question. We just talked about music earlier on. Um, it's been my biggest um game changer in my life. He's like, I can hear him tapping. He's going on Spotify. Dark days, days where you're just like, oh my God, like, is there a song that just picks you up that makes you just go like, yeah, cool, right? Is there like a raise your vibration song that's in your life that you're like, if I put that on, that changes everything?
Too many. Um, one one that I'll give you, which is
Can I
a
can I
little bit
just
sad.
stop you before you said that, right? Just remember that. Like you just said, there's too many. How powerful is that? You're like, oh my God, there's too many. So like, if you're like having a bad day and you are not having a good day when you put any songs on, like there's too many. You've already told me there's too many choices. That's so cool.
Honestly, it is right, and I think music, as you said earlier on, it's got a special power, and it brings back instant memories. One of them that I give you is Aloe Blacc, A King is Born. And as sad as I used to play it all the time when I had my son, and it's one of those things that I'd laugh and joke about, like, this is A King is Born, that whole sort of Simba moment. But that still puts like a massive smile on my face when I hear that song. Um, Everybody is getting mad around Michael Jackson right now.
Yeah, yeah,
He's a big issue, a big topic. He's obviously divisive in terms of some of how he lived his life, but there's still so many of his songs that take me back to my childhood when the TV wasn't on in our house. We just had music on, and me and my brother would be dancing around the living room, and that was probably a big part of my parents' entertainment. And actually, I still love that we do that with our kids. Like the tunes will go on, and they go absolutely mental and wild out. So yeah, man, we're just blessed with so much music, and it just brings back brilliant memories.
have you got a favorite Michael Jackson song?
How do you pick one? I love Beat It.
Mm.
Do you know what? I would never have screamed and shouted about Thriller, but just recently, because of because of everything that's been going on and Thriller becoming over and over again, and particularly like the movie and stuff like that, like, yeah, I've listened to that song differently recently and gone, you know, this was like an absolute masterclass in terms of not just what music is, but the cinematography that sort of sits around it. And
I did say that was going to be the last question, but I want to touch on something there. I don't know if you've seen the new movie. At the very start, and this is going to trigger some people, I 100% was in Joe Jackson's camp. I was watching him going, oh my God, this guy, all he wanted for his boys at the very start was for them to not have to live the life he lived. And he talks about not wanting them to grow up in the steelworks and do what he did. Obviously, you know, sometimes things can go the way they did. But at the very start of that film, I thought, do you know what? That's what most of our parents want. They want us to maybe not have the life they had or have a better opportunity, which is why sometimes that can turn into, and it particularly did in his, a controlling, I mean, his wasn't a particularly nice controlling environment, but it can turn into a controlling environment because it's like, damn boy, I don't want you to do this. I want you to do it my way. And I felt like at the very start of that film, for me, there was an element of it that, I mean, I very quickly transitioned from like, oh my God, the guy's nasty.
crazy.
But at the very start, I was like, do you know what? I felt like the early intention was meant with love.
So often, I think people that do bad things, the thing that puts them on that path is honourable, potentially extreme, and makes a lot of sense to them in that moment and over time, and that's what gives them the fuel to persist in doing something that's not great. And yeah, I think that's hard part of the human condition.
Yeah.
I think it's amazing to be able to recognise that. You need to recognise both sides, right? If the behaviours are inappropriate or bad, you've got to recognise them, call them out, address them. But I often sort of think it's important where you can to see actually what started, what are the first steps on the journey to X, what are the human emotions or the experiences that they had that meant that they could even see living a world like that. Because actually I think there's amazing lessons from that as well in terms of how do we potentially avoid or do different. Yeah, I could go into a big wormhole on that one, man.
But it comes back to that thing, isn't it? Like you go back to these questions you asked me earlier on. You know, you need to work 10 times. People like us need to work 10 times harder because they have felt an element of being held back, and then their projection is like you need to work harder than me because if you want to get what I got, you're gonna have to work hard. You know, and I think again it all comes back to that like. Weirdly that we just twisted this straight into Michael Jackson's movie at the end because I keep saying I'm going to go watch it again because it was so good, but it does, doesn't it? It just proves that like, you know, yeah, you do have to work hard in life. But at the same time, you don't have to go like, you know, you have to do what's best for you and internally what feels right. Yeah, man, I'm so grateful for this chat today. It's definitely going on my wins of the day. Dude, how can people find you and connect with you and like find out more about you, Amswell? Because I feel like we haven't talked enough about you today, dude.
We'll have to do a part 2 and I'll be more reasonable. Blacksherpa.com, you can find me, probably hang out on LinkedIn more than anything else. Nyambe Sumbwanyambe, you'll have to get the full name to be able to find me, which I'm sure will be in your show notes, or you can catch us on Instagram as well, which I've just started to build a platform on. So you can look for the 29K Club if you want more business and development stuff, or if you want to see families of the kids and stuff like that, or pictures of the kids and stuff like that. Just NVS. I did want to leave on one point, which is around limitations, just as what you talked to in that last bit then. And I think it's one thing in terms of the limitations that we put on ourselves, but I think we've got to be really careful about the limitations that we put on other people. And even in that parent situation that you talked about right now, is one thing that we often get wrong is those people that we try to protect, actually their limits or their abilities they might surpass our own. So actually the situations that we found difficult or hard, they might be more equipped. I think you're going to give people the space and time to go out and try stuff, knowing that they might get it wrong and know that that's part of the process. And know that the thing that's giving you the wisdom is to be able to make mistakes along the way, right? And have experiences.
Yeah.
Don't take away those opportunities from the people that we're trying to develop, particularly our younger children, man. It's really, really important.
Man, that is wise words from the Black Sherpa.
That's what we're about, man. Honestly, this has been a pleasure. Thank you so much for making space for me, Andy.
No, my pleasure, man.